let me ask you something. Why do you want to change your self-concept? What is your true intention behind it? What do you want to get out of it? Let's talk about some ways that you may be using self-concept work for the wrong intentions, for the wrong reasons, or maybe as a means to an end. And let's talk about what the real purpose of working on your self-concept is, because it is going to change your life if you do it right. There is so much to this work, but if you just use it as a means to an end, it will keep you trapped in a cycle. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I help you to bridge the gap between who you currently are or see yourself as and who you desire to be or become. So let's talk about how you may be potentially using working on your self-concept as a means to an end. When we use anything as a means to an end, we do it from a place of attachment, we do it from a place of resistance, and it always backfires. And that's why people often keep themselves stuck in a cycle and don't really get out of the rut or the reality or perception that they have created for themselves. And to start this off or bring this a bit into context, I want to tell you a little case study from a client of mine who was in my coaching program, Recreate Yourself. And one of the phases in that program is all about self-love, and not like the buzzwordy self-love, but a true sense of embodied self-love and wholeness. Because that's all we want. We want to feel whole. We want to feel loved and accepted, and we want to feel that we are enough and that we're fulfilled and whole. And true embodied self-love is actually a really important part of your self-concept, because it's pretty hard to become who you want to be if you don't love and accept who you presently are. So anyways, my client at the time, she did a ton of self-love practices and self-care, and she had a whole list of things that she was basically doing every day, because at the time she was single and she was spending a lot of time alone. And so she learned, okay, I need to pour into myself, I need to love up on myself. But she was still in this place of dissatisfaction, and it wasn't enough, and she didn't feel whole, she didn't feel confident, she didn't feel complete, she didn't feel like she was the version of herself that she wanted to be. And I asked her, well, why are you doing these practices? Why are you doing all this? And not only did it came through that actually she was just doing these practices because she thought it was gonna get her a relationship. She thought, I have to love myself and I have to do all these self-love practices so that I can get that thing over there. But not only that, it also didn't feel good to her. It felt like a chore to love herself. It felt like something that was on her to-do list, something that she had to do in order to progress in her life and to experience and live the life that she wanted to live. It didn't feel good to her. When I pointed that out to her, that was a light bulb moment for her, because she hadn't realized that it had felt like a chore. She thought she was doing everything right. And it is often the case that when you step into your wholeness, your sense of self-love, when you work on changing your self-concept and you truly transform into a new version of yourself, opportunities are going to open up, and you're going to actually call in the experiences and desires and people that you want in your life. But when the intention is off, the outcome is off. You're going to keep yourself in resistance, and you're not going to be able to actually get to the place you want to get to. So that example was around my client who used self-love practices for this, but it can very easily happen with self-concept work as well. The two are connected anyway, right? But let's talk about how you can know whether you are maybe using self-concept work or working on your self-concept as a means to an end, or whether your intention is off. And the first sign is that the practices that you're doing feel like a chore. It might feel like you have to implement these habits. I often hear from people, and this is often people who haven't worked with me yet, who are in Instagram in my DMs or who are just part of my community, who say, I just need to be more consistent. I just need to be more consistent with my practices and with the things I'm doing. And maybe for them, the intention isn't off, right? I'm not saying that, I don't know for sure. But when something feels like a chore, like something that you have to do, the energy you'll be doing it with, it just won't feel good. It just won't be fun. It just won't be good. And this is something that people often try with things like affirmations or some sort of mental practice. Or it can also happen with self-love practices and self-care practices, right? This can feel like a chore. So notice whether it does feel like a chore to you. And if it does, then you know there's something off in your intention, or there's something off in the way you are approaching it. The next sign is that you are maybe in longing and yearning. That is a sign that you're not actually shifting anything inside of you, or you're not fully transformed into that version of yourself, because you're still looking over there. You're still trying to get something, and you're still not satisfied where you are. And there's a difference between being satisfied where you are and working towards a goal, basically holding the vision and also being in a place of surrender, and just settling. The third sign, and that is the easiest sign to discover it, and if you will have noticed this sign already if you felt called out right in the beginning of this video, if even the title is maybe a bit like, whoops, she's talking to me. And that might be that you actually feel resistance to prioritizing your self-concept. Maybe you want to focus more on the external results. Maybe deep down, if you're really honest with yourself, you're like, I don't actually care about working on my identity, working on my self-concept. I really care about getting the thing I want. If you're focused more on external results or other people than yourself, then you are using working on your self-concept as a means to an end. There's some guy whistling in the background. I hope it doesn't bother you. The next sign is that you want to control, which is kind of connected to the previous one, right? You want to control other people, circumstances. You want certainty. You're not comfortable in the unknown. Which, when do we want to control? When do we not feel comfortable in uncertainty? When we're not fully rooted in ourselves. When we don't fully trust ourselves. We're not fully embodied. We're maybe spiraling or living in our head or trying to fix things. Another sign is that undesirable circumstances, things that you don't want to experience, completely throw you off. Maybe they trigger you, or you keep coming up against the same emotions. That is a clear sign that you are, number one, not fully embodied in the self-concept that you want to live from. You haven't become that version of yourself yet. And it's also a sign that you are using your external circumstances to dictate how you get to feel and who you get to be. So you're prioritizing, again, the external over the internal, which, even if you're working on your self-concept from that place, you are doing that as a means to an end. You are doing that with the intention to see a change externally, first and foremost. I want to let you know also to check out the links in the description box below, because I do have a free guidebook there, which is all around holistic manifestation, a holistic way to changing your state of being. This is a great resource filled with practices, so look at that one below. The next sign is that you keep going back and forth. You may have an idea of the self-concept that you want to live from, the identity that you want to embody. You may be working towards that. Maybe you are implementing certain habits, or you are doing certain practices, but it's not integrated. It's not who you have become. And that is a pattern that I see in people all of the time, that they go back and forth between states. To some extent, it's normal to go back and forth between states, but your identity should be quite solid. Your self-concept should be quite solid. And that's one of the things that I see the most often, or one of the patterns that I see the most often in people who are approaching primarily self-concept work from a surface level, or who don't have the right process or method for it, which is what I teach in Recreate Yourself, by the way. It's a very intentional process to guide you to becoming that version of yourself through a way where it's really integrated and it's who you are, and you don't go back and forth anymore. But that's something that I see very frequently in people, where they just go back and forth. And all that means is that it's not fully embodied. And basically, if you're approaching it from a surface level, there's often something off in either the intention, or it could also just be the approach, as I said. The next sign is an interesting one. It's that you are actively working on changing your self-concept, but you are still doing it from an old identity, from an old self-concept, or an old story, which is keeping you stuck. Now, this might feel a bit counterintuitive, because you may be wondering, well, how can I work on my new self-concept from a different version than who I currently am? Like, that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve, right? I'm trying to become that version. So how can I do that any differently? And you're right. To an extent, you are who you are. But firstly, We need to dismantle your old identity first. A big part of my method that I teach in Recreate Yourself is about the dismantling, the shedding of the layers, the releasing of the past, the attachments, the pain, the healing, the integration. And that is necessary because you can't just try to get over there from where you are here without backtracking. So basically, you will need to look at your future self and think about, what would I need to do? What would she tell me I'd have to do to become her? You need to put yourself into that mindset, at least already, of what that version of you is like. Because when you look at anything in your life from your current state of being and from your current identity, your current self-concept, you're gonna keep making choices from that self-concept. And that is outdated, or it's what you want to be outdated, right? And I know this one can feel a bit complex, so let me know if you have any questions on this one and I can make maybe a separate video on it. Another sign is that you feel comfortable being a victim. And this is something I addressed a couple videos ago in more depth, so I'm going to link that video in the description box below or above my head. But if you notice any sense of victimizing yourself or almost feeling comfortable where you are, this can be so subtle. But usually, if you're experiencing patterns that you don't really want to experience, there is a part of you that does feel comfy in them, that does feel, this is familiar and I actually like this. This actually benefits me in a way. So be honest with yourself if this is coming up, and if you notice, there's at least a part of me that feels quite cozy in the self-concept of being a victim, or things not working out for me, or being punished. I'm just so special that everybody can have the things that they want, but I can't. Spoiler alert, you're not that special. What is possible for other people is also possible for you. Well, let's talk about what the real purpose behind changing your self-concept actually is, because it is truly the most powerful and potent work that you will do in your life, when you know how to do it, when you do it in an effective way. There's so much you'll actually get out of it, which is not just based on external things, but also you will get the external things when you truly do that work. The first purpose in it is that you stop settling for less. When you are the version of yourself that you want to be, it's not just about getting anything, it's about the choices that you're making. It's about what you're seeing as possible for yourself. You're not going to try and prove yourself anymore, and you're not going to play small or play it safe. You're also going to feel, and I said this before, but this is such a beautiful one, you're going to feel so whole. You already are whole. Just as a side note, this is not something that you need to achieve. You don't need to become whole. You are whole as you are. But a lot of people don't feel whole. A lot of us feel fragmented. And that is often because parts of yourself may have been shamed, may have been rejected, may have been abandoned. You may have rejected parts of yourself. You may have shamed parts of yourself, or maybe you still carry shame about something that you're feeling or believing, or a part of your character, personality traits. And when you do that to yourself, when you shame parts of yourself, you fragment parts of yourself. You don't feel whole. You can't feel whole when that is happening. But when you truly do the deeper work to change your self-concept from the ground up, you get into the state of embodied wholeness, where you truly love each and every part of yourself, even the parts that you previously weren't even aware of. Because often it's the parts of yourself that you're not aware of because they're so deep down in your subconscious. That's actually what's sabotaging you and what's preventing you from becoming the version of you that you want to be. You're also going to be a lot more confident, and you're going to choose yourself fully when you have changed your self-concept, when you have stepped into the version of you that you truly can be and want to be, when you've stepped into your highest potential. That version of you approaches your relationship with yourself completely differently. And you won't question anymore. You won't question anymore. You will know who you are. And you'll really, really get to trust yourself. And self-trust will lead to you taking the actions you need to take in order to progress in your life, in order to create the things you want to create. It will enable you to trust the process when things feel like they're going wrong or things feel like they're delayed. I recently ran a free masterclass all about the bridge the period in between when things aren't fully coming to fruition yet, but you're kind of in that waiting period, send me a DM and I'll send it to you directly. But remember that this work truly matters because you deserve to live the life you want to live. You do not have to settle. Do let me know what your intention is for changing your self-concept. Why are you doing this work? Why are you working on this? Why do you want to become a different version of yourself? And what is that version of yourself like? Leave a comment below. Next week's video is all about surrendering. Surrendering as a pathway to your new self. If you want to dive deeper with me and you actually want to transform into that version of yourself without any back and forth anymore, then you can check out my coaching program, Recreate Yourself. That is also linked in the description box below. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you then.